Hey, hello everybody out there in Manchester, Hooks at Auburn, and those joining on their computers. I hope there's several of you. Because it's the first Wednesday of the month, I have the privilege of being joined by my good friend and great state senator and of long duration, Lou D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Bob. Great to be here.
We've been doing. We were talking about going back to days when we were doing radio. I was
Yes, yeah.
on with you on radio before we even had this. That's how long we've been kicking around together, Lou.
Right.
And tonight on this show, and I posted this, so I hope some of you saw it. I'm so pleased to welcome back one of my best colleagues in the Committee on Science, Technology, and Energy, Kat McGee.
Thank you.
From Hollis, also representing, you're just representing Hollis this time, right? You're not
Yes.
in the Floterial.
Yes.
In the past, you represented Hollis and New Boston, and I don't know.
Hollis, Milford, Mont Vernon, and New Boston.
Okay,
Wow.
but now she's just Hollis.
Just Hollis.
But she's still a state rep, and one of the most contributing and well-informed and insightful and accomplishing members of this very important committee. And even though I'm no longer on that committee, and certainly miss not being there, certainly miss not being the chairman, we could not have a better person to be there to carry on the fight that I was involved in than Kat McGee. You know, the energy situation, energy issues come and go, Lou.
Yes,
they
they do.
come and go. Is
They
it going to
do.
be coal or nuclear? Is it going to be, is are we going to cut down the trees to burn? Are we going to have wind? I mean,
Well,
it goes
wind-
on and on.
Water was a big deal there. for
Water was a
while.
big deal. Are we going to go
was.
back to the 18th century and have more dams and more hydro?
Well,
On and on and on.
Hydro has lost its glitter.
It has lost its glitter.
The dams,
Well,
the sale of the dams were far below what was predicted.
and now
When
we're
divestitures
actually
took place.
taking down some dams
Yes.
that we once thought we needed.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but whatever it is, energy is still important to our future as a society,
Absolutely.
and it will always be. I'm now convinced of that. Whatever the answers are, and they've changed dramatically, it will always be key to deciding how our society is going to move forward, because we do have energy needs that have to be met. Nobody wants to go without electricity. Nobody wants to go without heat. Nobody wants to go without fuel for their transportation, and whether it's through electrification or just direct burning of fuels, which most of us still do, alas. And I can't think of anybody who's better to talk about the shape of these issues and how we're dealing with them in New Hampshire than Kat McGee. So, Kat, welcome.
My goodness, what a lead-in. A lot to live up to. Thank you.
You have a lot to live up to, and you will do it because you are Kat McGee.
You will deliver.
You will definitely do it. So, what I'd like to do, Kat, and I usually do this, I've introduced you a little bit, but I'd like to tell you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Why did you decide? What's your record of being in New Hampshire? What's your record of activism? Why did you decide to run for the legislature? Why did you decide to offer the Energy, Science, and Technology Committee? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, will do. Well, I've already got the name, Kat McGee.
Kat McGee. That's Kathy, right? That's
It is, yeah,
Okay.
it's Kathy. I had to make a decision a while ago about whether I would go with Kat or Kathy, and that's what folks called me, so I went with that. My trajectory for wanting to run for the legislature started back in probably, first time I ran was 2012. So I ran several times in my town to get my feet wet, to get my name known. But I was involved.
What, you mean they didn't elect you the first time you ran?
They didn't, no, and it's a
Well,
Republican town.
shame
and
on them.
I'm a Democrat, so it took a little time to earn, which is fine. I think that's okay. It's a learning experience.
Oh, I had the same experience.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn. So, and during that time, I actually was at a meeting of my then state reps, just watching them answer questions. They had a community meeting at the local town hall, and several people showed up and said they had received letters from Kinder Morgan that there was a pipeline coming through their backyards.
I remember that proposal.
So the Ned pipeline was first going through northern Massachusetts with a spur through Hollis that was going to come up into Amherst. And so our town was bifurcated, basically. It was from the southwest corner to the northeast tip, so 50 foot right away. And they saw a lot of conservation land, a lot of open space, which was all by design. You know, we've been sort of trying to preserve the agricultural character of the town for years and been investing in that. So when they saw the open space, they were like, well, that's good. Less liability, easy route, you know.
They didn't realize they were dealing with Hollis, which is
well, you
a
know,
pretty environmentally conscious community.
It is. And it was very interesting for me because I think the selectmen in my town, it was kind of above their pay grade. So this was my first bid with activism and with energy. And so, so I jumped in to try and help the townspeople with their, to be a liaison with the town, because I had run Old Home Days. You know, like the selectmen knew me, and so I thought I could help. And it turned out that they didn't really know what to offer these folks. So I fell in league with them, and we ended up becoming the New Hampshire Pipeline Awareness Group. So we started a website. We started working with people across the border in Massachusetts, and we started learning and posting information for people so that anybody else on the route could know what was going on. And then it was kind of interesting. I ended up becoming the chair of a task force in my town to defend based on the statutes. So we started looking into statutes on water and safety and transportation and all the things that we might be able to put up as defenses for why don't do this. And that led to me working sort of behind the scenes with Beaverbrook because they were very concerned with breaking conservation easements. So there were a lot of
What's
sort of
Beaverbrook?
Beaverbrook is a conservation group that has been pulling together lands to try and keep, you know, contiguous conservation lands. So they have about 2,000 acres in our community and in Brookline. So it was really a fascinating sort of political process behind the scenes because they hired an attorney right away. They were in Governor Hassan's office, you know. So there was all this stuff happening. We put a report in the can, and as soon as we had completed what we thought would be an ideal defense, Kinder Morgan decided to back off on that plan, and they took people up on their argument that you should use an existing right-of-way, and they moved it all up into southern New Hampshire. So then it was 17 New Hampshire towns. So this was my first lesson in be careful what you wish, right? Do not give them
Exactly.
do not give them the answers that you don't want, you know. Yeah. So then it became a much larger fight. But anyhow, after that experience in my town, the selectmen asked me if I would serve on the Nashua Regional Planning Commission's Energy Facility Advisory Committee. And they were continuing to work with towns who were facing the Kinder Morgan project.
Yeah.
So I got to meet the Kinder Morgan people, work with them, and learn about,
Let me just
you know,
stop a
learn
minute.
about
You know,
energy, basically.
I'm recalling now the fight against the NED,
NED, yeah.
It was
Northeast Energy Direct.
Northeast Energy Direct. That proposal, you know, and they said, yeah, we can go to Hollis. There's lots of land there. There's also a lot of very active and concerned people there, of which Cat was one. And I think about that, and I think about the travail of the Northern Pass. You know, you think these big companies can come in with their consultants and their public relations people, and, you know, they're spreading around money for, you know, development associated, or, you know, mitigate the effects of the development they're doing. And you think, this is hopeless. We're up against these giant people. And yet you had both in the issue of the NED with your activism and the issue of the Northern Pass with, you know, a tremendous amount of opposition came up. And the opposition to those projects prevailed in both cases. So, you know, when you think, Lou, that democracy is, you know, kind of done for and it's all about the money, there are these shining examples. Whether you're pro or against either of these projects, there are these examples when the citizen activism has prevailed.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see citizen activism because knowledge of the issue is very important.
It is very important.
And that's the thing that's lacking most times. They become emotional issues, and as a result of that, emotions tend to cause friction and a little discord. And then you have some of those meetings that I've seen as time has gone on, and so forth, and you stray from the real issue.
Yes.
You know, and the real issue is.
But as Catwell
is-
said, the first thing she did was to get educated about these
Right.
issues.
Well,
and,
that's,
and be able to
that's-
deal with the facts and not just an emotional.
Right, and
You
that's
know,
a rare-
we're against
yeah.
any new pipelines, you know?
That's a rarity, Bob.
Yeah, it is.
That's
But
a
it
rarity.
Well,
it shows
it's
you what an
interesting.
effective citizen can do.
One of
Yeah.
the reasons that I wanted to run was because in observing what was going on in Concord when I first started paying
Right.
attention, I thought, oh no, I won't. I'm going to. I want to be the change that I seek here because I do feel we should be more, evidence-based and
Sure.
objective. And
Yeah.
what was interesting about the Ned pipeline is one of the first things I wanted to understand was, what is the nut they have to crack in terms of how many decatherms do they have to sell in order for this pipeline to go? Because there's an economic argument that they have to make.
Sure.
And that's really what did it, wasn't it?
And they
That
didn't
proved
have
to be
it.
the
So
most
we were an
important
irritant,
argument
but
you
I'm not
had.
sure we stopped it. I think it was that they really couldn't get anybody to sign on for the gas.
Except Liberty.
Yeah.
They had one contract, as I recall, tell me if I'm wrong, they had one contract from Liberty, which is a important utility in New Hampshire. It
Yep.
has a major role here in
Yep.
New Hampshire, and an even larger role in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And they turned out to be the only one that signed on to take a commitment of gas off this pipeline. Am I right about that?
Yeah,
Have I got that
and
right?
there was a lot more to that, I think. It was, I don't want to use the word incestuous, but Liberty Utilities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Algonquin Power and Utility
Yep.
Company in Canada. So they're a fossil fuel company. So I think they were happy about the idea of having more supply in the area for sure, because I think it was all somewhat. I think they had an interest in some of the,
Yeah.
if not the Kinder Morgan piece, there was some piece, but this is a long time ago. But I remember learning about those connections and thinking, wow, this is much bigger than just, do they get an
So-
easement?
Right.
So had the NED, the Northeast Direct pipeline proposal, had that crashed and burned by the time you ran for office, or was that still an issue? State office.
The last time I lost, I was running in the Floterial district. The first time I ran in the Floterial district, because
Okay.
no one else would run there, and I wasn't known in 3 of those towns. I lost in 2016, and then I won in 2018. The last time that I ran, I think the project was just dying at that point.
Yeah.
But the thing that it related to me, because I'm kind of a big picture person, is when I first got on Science, Technology, and Energy, and you were the chair, is we had the bills on biomass plants.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the vetoing of the biomass plants and the move by the governor to make sure that the veto was not overrun, because we had the votes in
Yes.
the House. And so he had to turn people who wanted it for their
Communities.
constituents. Yeah.
Right, sure.
And what I saw that as is, geez, if that 6 or 8%, I mean, we have a couple of private biomass plants, so it's not the full 8% of generation that comes from there. But the first thing that I thought was, wow, if we lose that 6%, we may have the argument that we need more pipelines. You know what I mean? I really
Yeah,
thought of
sure,
it in
sure,
terms of the connections
Sure,
of
sure.
the big picture. Because I had actually learned about knee pool and, I had learned about the regional grid
Yeah,
and what we were using for power. And, I started paying attention. The governor at that time had a 10-year energy strategy coming out. I had gone to the meetings with Meredith Hatfield. So I was educating myself all the time as to what is the state doing. And again, I didn't come to the party saying, this is my preferred answer.
Right.
I came to the party saying, if this is what's going on, where should we go? Which
Sure.
I think is the way we're supposed to
Sure,
work,
right.
but I haven't found that to be the case.
Right.
That's interesting. Meredith, I was very friendly with Meredith
Mm-hmm.
when she was in the governor's office for a long period of time and then moved to the public advocate.
Yep.
And she's left the state now, has she not? I think she's working in Massachusetts.
I believe so.
Yeah. She was a quality person and a
Yep.
very...
She definitely
very-
was.
Oh, and very knowledgeable.
Yeah, she wrote
Quote,
I think the first 10-year energy strategy that we had, and it was a very
could-
good and accomplished project and set out the right priorities, in my opinion.
And then she couldn't get reappointed. That was
Yeah.
that was the deal. She just couldn't get reappointed.
Yeah.
But she was a quality person.
That
and did a
just
good
happened
job.
on the Public Utilities
Yes.
Commission as well.
We have an
Kate-
incoming
Kate-
call. Let's
Kate
see what it
Bailey
is.
was
Yep.
supposed to be
Hello,
Yeah.
caller. Happy to have you join us on the progress report. You're ready to go with your question or comment with
Yes,
Lou or I, or
please. And thank you for having some very knowledgeable guests on your program tonight. And I'd like to hear from the senator and also from the representative, and maybe from you, Mr. Backus, because in reality, I live in Manchester, New Hampshire, and right now it's pretty nice in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm running my air conditioner a couple of days a week when it's muggy and a little bit uncomfortable. But I am a little concerned with the fact that gas is costing me almost $3 a gallon right now.
you're talking about gasoline, right?
Gasoline.
Yeah, I
right.
mean, and I did put some oil in my tank, and because I bought a certain amount of gallons, I only paid $2.59 a gallon. But this is August, okay? And we have September, October, November, December, January, February, March, and maybe April, when it's going to be very, very cold. So I am very sympathetic and very concerned, as your guests are, with protecting environment and using our resources wisely. I think we were put here to be good stewards of the earth. But what is your plan in the face of not having a pipeline, not having these certain projects that had been put forward, that would provide us with energy, that would provide us with heat, that would provide us with, the resources that we need? What is your alternate plan? Because, we got the pipeline pulled out from under us, and gas is now almost $3 a gallon, and I just think, my goodness, are we cutting off our noses to spite our face? So I'm going to hang up. I would love to hear
Okay.
what the alternate plan is that the senator and the representative have, and I thank you for this discussion because I think it's important.
Well, thank you for calling in. It's a very good question. We'll let you go, and we will have at it. We appreciate you
Thank
bringing
you.
this issue up.
Yeah, thank you. That was very thoughtful.
It was very thoughtful, and it's, right down to the basics.
And I think it's the way folks think about the issue as well. I noticed she was saying that the gasoline for her car was going up. That has nothing to do with the pipeline. The pipeline was
Right.
was not liquid gas. Yeah, it was gas.
Right.
Yeah.
Natural gas.
Natural gas,
Natural
right.
gas.
But I think the point of what is the plan is something I have also been asking in this past year with the new leadership that we have on our committee, because I think that's where we've been lacking, is that we had gone from looking at what was coming at us in terms of our environmental stewardship and climate change and making changes in order to help us transition to cleaner sources of energy. How were we going to do that? And that's by sector, right? So there's the transportation sector, which she was just speaking of, and then the home heating sector, which is a little trickier. And then there's electric generation, where we've already done a lot of work. So as a government, we should be looking at that portfolio pie, which I first saw with Meredith Hatfield, and that struck me as a really good way for us to be managing, right? We should be looking at where is the problem and how do we solve those problems? What are the elements we need to bring in to be more efficient? And I think policy-wise, that's what we've been trying to do. We've been making strides in different areas, like the statewide energy data platform, which we're trying to get through the Public Utilities Commission, in order to be able to understand where our efficiencies are needed. The reason that gas pipeline project didn't work is because we really didn't need that gas. And what ended up happening was they figured out that the existing pipeline that we have had additional capacity. And so it really is a question of looking at what you actually need for energy and your projections for the future, and then how you're going to accomplish it. But right now, there is no plan, and
Yeah.
there is no plan.
You know, this lady's comment, which was very welcome, thank you for calling, raises the question that, you know, I know you've thought about, and probably you too, Lou. Are we going to electrify our transportation sector?
Yep.
There was a time we thought we didn't want to use electricity, which is a very high quality means of providing energy services, very high quality, and it was like, you know, we don't want to use that on, you know, things that could have been met by other methods. But now, with the technology advances, it looks like, you know, electrifying our transportation sector is going to be a very important part of addressing, you know, our
Right.
climate change goals of reducing carbon and so forth. And it's moving forward incredibly rapidly.
Yes.
I mean, you know, the major car manufacturers are saying they're going to phase out manufacturing any kind of fossil fuel-fired vehicles, starting with passenger cars, but eventually getting to trucks and buses.
Well, that's all you have to do is go to any of the recreation areas, and you now see the electric stations.
Yeah.
For fixing your vehicle.
Mine's in my garage.
Right, and
You got
so-
one? You got electric
I
vehicles?
do. We have two.
I was at a. I
Really?
was at
Fully
a,
electric, not hybrid? You got two fully electric?
I was at a Dunkin'
Well, you're
Donuts.
doing the thing.
I was at a Dunkin' Donuts up north, and just before Plymouth, and now on the side are a number
Yep.
of electric stations, and I see them. I
Yeah.
see them appearing throughout the country, and I think the interesting aspect is this: go back to the COVID situation. Think about the 16 months of COVID when we had it in place, and think of what the air was like during that 16-month
It
period.
was somewhat better.
It was somewhat better. Think of what the sky was like,
Yeah.
et cetera. And I think if you're talking about an energy plan and you want something that's good for the environment, you just take a look at what happened during that 16-month period. And what was the reason for it? The fact that cars weren't on the
Not
road.
on the road,
All right,
yep.
emissions weren't flowing.
It's
into
44%
the
of New
Yeah.
Hampshire's emissions is from the transportation sector at this point. So that's big enough that we should be
It's now the
looking
biggest,
at
the
it.
biggest contributor to pollution is not the electric generation sector.
No.
It's the transportation sector.
Well, look what you've done to
And
the
this,
generator.
I wanted to
sector.
ask you about this, Kat, too, because you're so well up on so many things. You know, one of the things we got was the fiasco of the Volkswagen cheating on their emissions on
Right.
their diesel vehicles. And they got caught. And that's an interesting story, by the way. I'd love to tell, but I'm not going to take up the time now. It wasn't EPA that caught them. It was a bunch of university students in West Virginia that caught
Right.
them. I mean, it's fascinating. But they got caught, and they were definitely cheating. A major company like that, the largest automotive manufacturer in the world, I think, at the time. And they got caught. And the result was that they're now having to pay lots of fines that are redounding to the benefits of all of our states in the United States.
Right.
And a good chunk of that money that's coming in to all the states, including New Hampshire, some of it, a significant part of it is available to develop the electronic charging
infrastructure.
station. So you don't have to wait, for,
Right.
72 hours to charge it up in a household outlet. You can charge this thing in, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes on these high
The
speed things.
superchargers, yeah.
Superchargers, which is what we need, because people want to be able to go where they want to go, and they want to make sure they're going to get there before they run out of whatever
fuel.
source they're using,
Right,
whether
right.
it's gasoline or electricity.
Yep.
So how are we doing on that, Kat? Can you bring us up to date on
Yeah,
that?
there hasn't been anything done on it, so I don't have a lot to report. We're still waiting to figure out. I mean, the Department of Transportation, I've seen a couple of presentations by the commissioner there, and they're even talking about vehicle-to-vehicle infrastructure on the highways, the communication that's going to happen with smart cars in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot coming.
Yeah.
But as you know, our state is frugal in terms of those types of investments, right? There's not going to be major money invested, and so the
They're
money
not going to
from-
come out of the general fund.
right, and the money from the Volkswagen settlement was a good chunk of it was supposed to be allotted to that charger infrastructure. So we're still waiting to find out what the plan is on that.
So in so
Hasn't
many
been done.
areas, and this just gripes me beyond belief, and I've talked to Lou about it, and I'm sure you've heard me on this too. It just bothers me that New Hampshire lags. I don't care about the country as a whole. I mean, a lot of places that are way behind in a lot of areas. But in New England, where we have a relatively clean electric grid, relatively, not absolutely, relatively, we lag our fellow states in New England on energy efficiency accomplishments, on renewable energy penetration, and I think probably we lack on, infrastructure for charging electric vehicles.
Yeah, and those are choices. And I think that we've, in the last several years, actually under the Sununu administration, the Transportation Climate Initiative that the other regional states are participating in to try and figure out where do those superchargers go? What's the infrastructure from one state to another? They're trying to take a regional approach, sort
Yeah.
of like they did with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative,
Yeah.
right?
Which
All
we
the
are
states-
part of, barely, but we're
right,
in there.
But all the states benefit from that. And I think
Yeah.
even some of the members on our committee don't understand. Are we having a buzz?
Whatever you did, Lou, it worked.
Sorry.
A mechanic.
Yeah, all right. I think some of the folks on the committee aren't even aware of that the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is, a carbon pricing scheme whereby the polluters pay into a fund and then the states reap based on how much emissions each of their states is
Yeah.
qualified to get returns on, and then that money can be used for those energy efficiencies and investments and whatever the state's trying to do to further their energy portfolio to clean it up. So that was a really good decision. And the last time they went to auction, instead of 14 million, which is what we got back in the prior 2 years, it was 21 million. So depending on how they're pricing the pollution, maybe the pollution was increasing from industry, I don't really know.
Right.
But the money was significantly higher from that auction. That's not chump change. You could invest that money wisely, and yet the administration's position has been, and we've been trying to figure out ways to undo it. I know John Mann, Representative Mann, has been working for a long time to say that money that comes in should significantly be put into energy efficiency because
Right.
those dollars multiply over time, and
That's your
it's
best
money we
payback.
never
That's
have
your
to spend
best
again.
payback to
It
get
is.
your money back,
But we can't
and
convince
more
the
than
other
your money
people
back.
on the committee of that. And
Yeah,
so
that's a
what's
real
happening
problem.
is the money is being diluted and submitted back to ratepayers pennies, per
Right.
month, and it doesn't have any impact, and it doesn't allow us to invest. So, I mean, we have different philosophies really of how to address this, and
Yeah.
I think the question I'd like to see people return to is, what is the severity of the issue that we're trying to address? Because time is running short for us to actually address it.
You're talking about the risk of climate change,
Yeah,
of course.
I mean, we are seeing changes. We are seeing,
Yes.
Absolutely.
instability in the weather. How costly is that going to be?
Yeah.
So anyway, but I don't want to philosophize on that. But so
It's not philosophy, it's the facts.
yeah, and we don't talk about it enough. I mean, that's the reason all of this was undertaken in
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
place, and we
Yeah.
lose sight of that as we debate back and forth. How to
The thing that
fix
bugs
it.
me is that we have this existential threat of climate change. We can't stop it. We're too late to stop it. Now we're into, can we get adaptive technologies to minimize the devastating effects, whether it's raising the buildings in Miami Beach and a lot of other places, against the increasing high tides. What can we do about these forest fires? I mean, on and on and on. We have to be adaptive, but how are we doing in addressing this? And if people don't get this, we just can't. We can't take the remaining fossil fuel we have in the earth that hasn't been already brought up to the surface, whether it's coal or oil or even natural gas.
Yes.
We can't bring that all up and burn it and expect to survive in the planet we used to living on.
it's going to be really toasty.
It's going to be really toasty is too generous. I mean, it's going to be catastrophic. So when I look at that issue, and we have some great people working on this. You're one cat, John Cage and the New Hampshire Climate Coalition. Can't say enough about that guy and his daughter. They're
Catherine,
just,
yeah.
Catherine. They're just wonderful, and they're working on this nonstop. And yet we don't seem to get the interest at the state and federal level that we need on this. And the other thing that bugs me about it is the answers don't cost money; they save money.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
How come we can't get people to understand that? We can save money. The best energy you can get is the energy you don't need to bring another kilowatt online. Much less
The
a
megawatt,
The
that's what-
megawatt, in Amory Lovin's famous and felicitous phrase, the energy you don't use, but you still get your refrigerator to keep your beer cold. You still get your air conditioner to keep you and your wife somewhat happy. And if the issue is temperature, and on and on and on, and yet we can't seem to get that done. Talk about that and what you think. Well, how have we done in this session with? I know you're not in the majority. Boy,
No.
I wish you were, but you're not. So talk
Well,
about that.
I think one of the things I just sent something in to the union leader about HB 373, which was a bill that came from Americans Prosperity.
Yeah.
So it was a industry-led bill that was given to somebody on our committee to put in, and it originally we were referring to it as a gag order because it was basically saying that the Department of Environmental Services was prohibited from speaking to anyone in other states, anybody in regional
Is this
organizations.
about the Transportation Climate Initiative, or is it more
It was,
general?
yeah. So it said
I thought that was
any
dreadful.
low carbon fuel programs.
Yeah.
But they ended up changing some of the wording, but what they did was they decided that in order for DES to speak to anyone else about anything to do with cleaning up the transportation sector, which is the next logical place for us to look at
It
cleaning,
certainly
right?
is, yeah.
So we've been
We kind of know the answer to the electric
well, the governor
situation.
decided we wouldn't be part of TCI.
Yeah, right.
And so DES was simply monitoring those conversations. So
Now
they
they're
could
not even doing
so that.
that.
They could inform us,
Yeah,
right? They
they're not
could
even
come to
doing
our
that,
committee and
yeah.
say, here's what they're doing. We think it's good, it's bad, whatever. But now they don't want them to even have the information, which I think is a bad thing. But the bills was changed so that now there's a roadblock in front of the Department of Environmental Services that they have to get permission from the legislature as well as the governor, because the governor's already, told them we're not going to be in TCI. So he's made the decision and they're not doing anything to be involved in that. But now they have to get legislative approval and executive council approval, which means the
It ain't-
people there are going to be demoralized. They're
It's-
not going to do their
yeah,
jobs. They're not going to bother.
It ain't going to happen.
It's going to be too hard,
It'll be too hard.
So it's
Too bad. We got good people that want to
We
do the
do.
right thing, and
We
they've
have
been
very good
hamstrung at every turn by the political leadership we have in this state right now, from top to bottom.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense
Yeah, yeah.
because we that's how we make better decisions, and it's almost like we don't want to.
Right.
We want to keep our heads in the sand, and
Well, it's difficult. There's no question.
Very
When you look at what happened, in my opinion, in this session, which was from all points of view, the most difficult session ever, and the piece of legislation that became House Bill 1 and House Bill 2,
This is a guy from a lot of experience.
the most significant House Bill 2 ever produced. And what's in that bill is more policy than has ever been articulated, and things like this are in there. And diversive concepts is in there.
yes,
24 weeks in abortion, and they're in there. Other things are in there. Paying back people who were fined because of violating laws. There's money available to
Right.
pay those people back. I mean, all of these things appear in that budget. So that document really has taken the place of a lot of legislation. Some of it was put on the table, some of it was defeated, but it popped back into
And
the budget.
it's a bypassing the usual legislative process
Well,
with
it
hearings
bypassed
and,
the process, right?
Okay, we have another call.
That's a problem.
Hey, caller, welcome to the Progress Report. Glad to have you join us. If you have something for me or Lou or our guest, Kat McGee.
Okay, well, I believe I'm watching you live. This is Rick Maynard from Manchester, New Hampshire.
Well, you are watching us live then. I know you, Rick, and thank you for joining us. You got a question or a comment, or you want
I
to?
wanted to say something in regards. I mean, we're facing a climate emergency, and this is something that the scientists do not disagree on. It's the politicians that disagree on this part.
Very good point.
And Pat brought forward that we have to know what our energy, where we're getting it now. We have to have this information. And that,
You still there?
Yeah, this is Rick Maynard, Manchester, New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
yeah, you just disappeared for a minute. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm calling you from my daughter's in Niagara Falls. I'm actually here supervising some electrical for her.
Well, Niagara Falls is a big hydroelectric facility in this country.
Right?
Kind of what we see going over the falls is what's left over after they meet the energy needs of New York Power Authority.
And basically, I've worked on everything there is to work on. And Kat said we have to know where our energy is coming from. What is the mix that we're having?
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that we have to add something else to that we have to have a vision
Yes.
of where we want to be, where we want our energy to come from
Yep.
in the future.
Yeah.
So when I present that, I mean, last year I was doing almost once every 1 week a month. I was doing offshore wind webinars and events, and this year it's storage is the big thing. So it's
Yeah.
last event I was at was 1 week long because
Yeah.
none of these things, whether it be solar, wind, none of these things work unless we have storage, because these means only produce the electricity when it's available to be produced, not when we need to use it.
That's
So
true.
without storage, we're not going to see these things. Is there any one silver bullet? I don't think so. I think
No.
it's a bunch of little answers.
But,
Little answers like carbon cash back is probably the biggest step we can take to actually affect the temperature change that this planet will experience from pursuing the fossil fuel energy that we have today.
Yeah.
Then when you use En-ROADS from MIT and start doing climate simulation, you can look at each effect of each change, whether it's technology, electrification, forestation. I mean, you can look at each of these items and see what effect it will have on the temperature change on the planet. So,
Okay. Okay,
I work
Rick, that's a fine comment. I'm going to turn it over to Kat to deal with this because energy storage is definitely a big part of our need to advance for the reasons you've well said. And, you know, the energy sources we want to turn to in the future, number one, energy efficiency, which doesn't require any emissions and is the cheapest form. But behind that, we want our renewables, our solar and our wind, and those are intermittent. So to balance that out, we need to have that energy available to be stored if it can be. And I'm going to ask Kat to respond to that.
Sure.
Thanks for calling in, Rick.
Nice to hear from you, Rick. Yeah, we actually had an omnibus bill that came out of the Senate, SB 91, and storage, language around storage, which had been missing from statutes. We didn't really have it represented in our laws, has been added as another category, which needed to be included because we have storage projects that are ongoing now, and we know that it's coming. Basically, local energy generation is only going to be adequate if we are able to also store. So we have to accommodate both. But I think Rick made a really good point, which is that where energy is concerned, you need a vision, right? And that's what the 10-year energy plan was intended to be when it
Yeah,
first
that's right,
started
that's right,
having it,
that's
right? You need a
right,
vision
yep.
of where we're trying to go. That has been lacking. All of the things that we've seen put together to replace what that energy vision used to be, they don't really say where we're going. They say this is what we have and this may increase, and they don't really go the next level, which you
Where
have
do we
to
want
do
to be?
in
Where do
these
we want to be in
circumstances.
10
You have to
years?
say
Yeah.
what percentage is going to be this and this and that. What are we driving toward? But I think you're right that it's politics. He was right. It's not science that's in the way. It's politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many more things I want to talk to you about, Kat, but let me just start with this one. I believe in Don Kreese, our able consumer advocate. You're a fan of his. I'm a fan of his. We're so glad he's there. Very able lawyer to boot. He says, energy efficiency is his number one goal, and I think you and I agree on that. Of all the energy sources we can look to, using the energy you have today, better, so you don't need to generate more more energy, whether it's from fossil or even renewables, the better off you're going to be. It's the cheapest with the quickest payback. And the number one vehicle we had to achieve our energy goals was the Energy Efficiency Resource Standard, which set goals that the utilities had to meet
Yes.
to achieve certain degrees of energy efficiency. And this thing has been put in place, I guess it's been in there 4 or 5 years now. And last year was supposed to be an update and an advancement of those goals. I think you were part of this, Kat. We had a big docket at the PUC. Everybody came together. I think it was ably orchestrated by Don Kreese, our consumer advocate representing the interests of residential ratepayers. He got everybody to agree on an overall plan to advance this. It went to the Public Utilities Commission, and they never adopted it. And where is that now? Can we get the Energy Efficiency Resource Standard updated and made more aggressive so we'll achieve not only better energy goals in terms of climate change and reducing carbon, but also in more affordable energy? Can we get there? What's happening now? And I know the PUC's kind of been taken down a lot by the development of the Department of Energy. You can talk about that too.
I'll back up a little bit because it's all kind of connected. I'm the speaker-appointed Democrat from Science, Technology, and Energy on the EASY board now.
Yeah,
So
which
that
is
was
the Energy Efficiency and Sustainability Energy Board.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
And the EASY board begat the Energy Resource Standard group that was working on that report that was going to go to the PUC for ratification. So it was a settlement agreement, basically.
It was a settlement agreement. It's the
And-
best way out of any litigation as
Exactly,
a lawyer. I can
exactly.
promise you that's the truth.
And so that settlement agreement was well loved by everyone, including all of the utilities. Eversource was firmly behind it. And I have been...
Think about that, folks.
Yeah.
There's not a continuing war between the utilities and the consumer groups and the low-income groups and the conservation groups. They all came together.
That's right.
That this is the right thing to do. You think the millennium has arrived.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
Well, what
But
ended
it
up
didn't
happening
happen.
was in November of 2020, during the pandemic, after the election, a letter went in from basically all the Republicans on our committee. And I sort of I don't know who sent it to me, but, and it basically said, well, because of the pandemic, we don't think you should go forward with this energy efficiency plan. And it's a multi-year plan.
3
that was-
years.
Yeah, was agreed to.
Yeah.
So, so I orchestrated another letter,
Yeah.
saying, well, wait, these are all the things that you heard in evidence that say it's like a 4-to-1 return on investment. There's no
And why
negative
should
impact.
the pandemic affect this? The pandemic
was
has nothing to do
no
with the
reason.
fact that energy efficiency is cost effective, it's emissions free,
Right.
it's the best solution to meeting as much of our energy needs as we can through this vehicle.
Everyone agreed to that, but the wrench was thrown, and it stopped the review, which was supposed to be completed in December. There was supposed to be a decision by the first month of the year,
Yep,
so that
yep,
didn't happen.
yep.
And then there was a long period, very long period actually, where Public Utilities Commissioner Kate Bailey, who was finishing up 6 years and would have been happy to re-up. She's an excellent commissioner. She didn't get re-upped. And then somebody new who doesn't really have any experience in energy, a political appointee, was put in
A guy from Manchester, by
in
the way.
between. Yes, I know. Yeah. He ran here for state rep, I heard. Dan Goldman,
Yep.
I think. Goldman.
Yep.
And so, so what was interesting is there were a couple of things pending. I was involved the entire pandemic on the statewide energy data platform, which was another thing where we were working with the utilities in order to come up with a way to combine not only utility energy but also all other forms of energy in one place, so we had the data. So we could say, here's where we're using it, here's where we could use some additional, local generation, planning. For energy efficiency, you have to know what you have before you can manage it. And so this would have been a leap forward for us, and we got to settlement, which was amazing. We had defined the entire project, which was also amazing. We had some great technical people working with us. And people from out of state were so interested in this project that they were doing it all gratis. And so we got this wonderful project tied up in a bow, And Kate Bailey, before she retired, and the head commissioner, Diane Martin, listened to the case a couple of months ago now. And we've heard nothing. So everything is sort of like going into the PUC, but not coming out of the PUC. And we're not really sure why the decisions are not happening, because these are all.
Because the PUC is now essentially made to just have a much narrower role.
Oh, yeah.
And this will be turned over to the new State Department of
It
Energy,
is.
which was created in Trailer Bill too.
Right, it was.
Along with all these other things you
Right,
mentioned, Lou,
yeah.
with its non-budgetary thing.
Right.
Well, I
to
think
create
you,
a State
you
Department of
ran you
Energy.
ran a committee to look into
I did.
the Department of Energy, and there was no appetite for it when you finished your committee.
Right,
And then we
It
need
comes-
one.
yeah.
So
Well,
that was funny.
I'm getting some credit or blame for this, which I probably don't
think
deserve either
I
way.
think it would have been done right, though. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of churn that's happening.
Yeah.
And
So can this still happen? Can this agreement that we had for an advancement of the energy efficiency resource standard to upgrade our goals for more energy efficiency, can it still happen, or is it just
well,
gone by the boards? I don't
on
know.
the Easy board, Kate. It's terrible that I'm thinking Kate Epson. That's not who it is.
Kate Bailey.
No, from Eversource.
Oh, Peters.
Kate Peters. Yes.
Thank you.
She is also on the Easy board, non-voting member, and
Yes,
at
she
the
is.
and the last meeting that we had, she was mentioning where Eversource stands, because they were waiting for a decision, because they've got backed up all kinds of things that are going out throughout the year that are based on, are we doing this? Are we funding this? Is this happening? And so she had expressed the fact that it had become difficult for Eversource, because they were assuming that the state wasn't going to pull up the reins on something everyone had agreed to.
Right.
But I just received something on New Hampshire Saves, and so I think they're moving forward under the old plan. Basically, they
That's not
continued
good
the
enough.
old funding, right.
Yeah,
and
it's
there
not
would've-
good enough.
there
I mean,
would've
it's
been
better
additional
than nothing,
funding.
but it's not good enough.
Yep.
Our goals are not sufficient. We don't have a sufficiently robust goal for penetration of new solar. It's minuscule. I mean, we just trail everybody else in New England. It just drives me nuts that we're in this
We're the
situation.
donut hole.
Yeah,
That's what
I
they
mean,
call
it's just dreadful. But I think this energy efficiency thing is so key. You've heard me say this, and you have too. I got to
Yep.
say it one more time. When I was fighting the Seabrook Dragon, I mean, I think it was quite the dragon that I do, but I was fighting it, and we were told, if you don't want Seabrook, your choice is coal.
Yes.
What would you rather have?
Right.
Coal with all those pollutions and those black lung deaths
Right.
and blown off mountaintops in West Virginia? Or would you rather have nuclear with its nuclear waste and accident potential? I said, that's a lousy choice. And today we have better choices, and we're not getting there. I just think it's appalling. When we came to the point where Eversource, folks, for you my age, that's Public Service Company of New Hampshire.
Yep,
But it's
PSNH.
been Eversource for quite a while now. It's not just New Hampshire. It's now the largest utility in New England.
Right.
They don't do any generation anymore. We
Right.
got rid of that because
It's all
thanks
good.
to
It's all good.
work you did back in the 90s with Jeff Bradley and many others. They don't do that. When we got them to say, yes, we can agree, we should go aggressively in favor of energy efficiency, and by the way, offshore wind is something
Yeah,
they're promoting
it's a big
too.
deal.
And we can't get the state government to support it.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. I mean, I thought when we'd won the utilities over, we'd won.
Well,
Well, turns out it wasn't so
different.
easy. Not from lack of good effort by capable people like Kat, our guest here today.
right. Well, we couldn't get a third Public Utilities Commissioner appointed.
Yeah.
Never mind get
Yeah.
Kate Bailey reappointed.
Public
But
Utilities Commission has
we couldn't
shrunk
get
to
we couldn't get a third member.
A shell of what it once was,
And-
which
and,
may be a good thing in the long run. I believe it will be, but I don't want to talk about that. But in any event, you're holding the line on a lot of things up there in Concord, and it's tough to hold the line when you're not in the majority, but I know you're doing your best. I don't know what you want to talk about next, but I hope we have time, because we're getting this hour's going by fast, as I knew it would, to talk about maybe some of the things that are not getting done in Concord can now be empowered to be done by local communities, including our dear Queen City here of Manchester. I'm talking about community power.
Yes.
And you did some good things up there to
We
make that
did.
possible.
We
So
did.
talk about that and where we're going on that and why it's important.
Well, I would have to say, that Jackie Kelly Pitts had a lot to, she helped a lot with that bill. So HB
Well, that's good to hear.
yeah,
Yeah.
HB 315, she was on it from the start. And I think it initially came in a little bit scary. The initial bill was
Well,
written
I
by
heard
an
it was
attorney.
a lot scarier.
Yeah, it was written by an attorney at Eversource, and I've had dealings. I've been in meetings with him since then, and I don't know how long he's been there, but the language in the bill was not tenable to the folks who actually want to do community power. They
Yeah.
were saying this is, all one-sided, and so you can understand that maybe an attorney that's working for a utility
Yeah,
might
sure.
have that perspective, but it wasn't
Let
workable.
let me ask you to back up a bit. Community power, what is it and why do we want it?
Well, community power just allows communities to figure out how they can generate local power that will help lower the bills of the people that live in the community. So it doesn't have to be the entire community. It doesn't have to be everyone. It can be whatever they decide it to be. In Nashua, for instance, they've been desperate to try and include their hydro in the net metering program so that they can
Right.
lower the bills,
Which they own those
They own
dams.
They do,
They
they
own
do.
those dams which have potential.
Yeah, so that's a significant source of power, but some place smaller like Hollis might be looking at just the downtown government buildings and schools that they want to.
But isn't it also true,
put solar
even if you
panels
don't
on.
have a Nashua, with their hydro, or Manchester with Amoskeag Falls or whatever, even if you don't have that,
The facility, yeah.
you can contract for
Sure.
power acquisition from whatever
Yeah.
source.
Yeah, there's
Hopefully
generation,
people
and
would
then
pick-
there's supply.
And
The
then people would
suppliers.
pick a cleaner
right.
source rather than a dirty
That's
source.
right.
And you can then offer that to service your own municipal accounts.
Yep.
And maybe, and your citizens to have lower costs.
It's the
and
epitome of
hopefully-
local control.
It's local control.
Yeah.
We all have a chance supposedly now to pick our power supplier.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't have a choice in who's going to deliver the power.
Right.
For 70% of us is going to be through Eversource lines, transmission and distribution. But you can join some other company, and the PUC's at a whole list of them. You say, I want my power to come from, renewables or hydro or whatever. This would enable communities to do that on behalf of their citizens and exercise the bargaining power that an individual doesn't really
That's
have.
correct. Yeah.
So you might have the potential for really saving people money.
Yes.
And
Which is why it's been held up so long.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well,
And-
it changes the
can-
market.
and-
I mean, that's the thing.
But
is
you've now put in
who
place,
controls the
through the
market.
efforts that you made and others on your committee, and turned around the leadership in the committee on this, to a bill that now the structure is in place to move forward with this in some of our communities around the state, right?
Yep.
And some of them are moving forward, are they not?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, who's moving forward?
Well, I mean, Lebanon's kind of at the forefront. There are
Yeah.
others.
Keene?
Yep.
Keene?
Yep. Keene was
Hanover?
in line. Yep.
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 And I hope Manchester will not be far behind. I mean, we should get this going. We made a presentation to an aldermanic committee. I got to get back to them and see where it is. They tabled it. But I believe Cliff Below has been in touch with some of these aldermen on this. And
Well, Below's been at the forefront of this
Oh,
for a long,
Below,
period of time.
He was at the forefront of
Yeah.
of
A lot.
rectifying what was wrong with the bill too, because he has a really innate understanding of where we're going to go. And
He
so,
does.
there's only a handful of people who really have that vision.
yeah,
And he's one of them, so he's very helpful.
Yeah, and
and
of
he
course-
also helped to influence the leadership on the committee.
very much so. That was really
that
important.
that it was needed.
They were
and-
going the wrong way, and he apparently turned around the leadership of your committee, which has not been too great in many areas. But
Cliff
this was vital.
Well,
Cliff has been
Because
there a
I
long
think this
time.
is a really good way we can go and make New Hampshire do better than it has been doing vis-a-vis the rest of the New England states, without not depending necessarily on state initiatives, but state authorization for the municipalities to act on their own behalf.
Well, then we got community power in tandem with municipal net metering. So we wanted net metering for anyone that was producing, so that they could, anything they produced over 1 megawatt, so any larger
Right.
facilities
Yeah.
between 1 and 5 would be able to get credit for
Yeah.
that power that they generate.
Yeah.
And there was a disagreement on the committee about the value. And so, on our, the evidence that we tried to bring forward and that others who testified brought forward was that in many cases, locally generated energy is actually of a higher value than the stuff you buy from the default
Yeah.
service, right? But all we were looking for was that little differential, 3 cents or whatever. And we finally did get that. We got that amount written into the bill that we passed. So.
That was a good achievement.
And it's so, but it was limited, it was narrowcast just to municipalities. But there were, again, many municipalities who had said, we could really benefit from this. In my community, we put solar panels on our elementary schools. And it's like, we made the investment, but we're generating over a megawatt, but we're not getting paid for that additional energy, and we should
is
be,
wrong. You should
because
be. Absolutely
it can be
should
used
be.
down the street. And
Absolutely should be.
So the value. So I think that's the thing that's really hard with legislators, because we're all amateur, right?
Yeah.
We can learn as much as we want one way or another, but the fact is we're not experts.
Yeah.
And creating the correct balance in the market is a trick. It's a
Yeah.
trick. Because electricity is going up. And I know that the governor keeps saying that his job is to keep the rates down, and that's why we can't invest in anything new or anything. But that's kind of a false argument, I think, because
Totally.
because what ends up happening is, because we don't invest in lowering our carbon footprint, and because we don't invest in energy efficiency, we end up picking up a higher percentage of regional energy costs on the electric grid. And it's a complicated thing to explain to people, but it's important for people to understand that we end up with higher electric rates in the state for our lack of ambition in terms of
Well,
And we're
embracing
focusing
new
on the wrong
energy.
thing. We're focusing on rates anyhow. Nobody pays rates. We all pay bills.
Right.
Lower your bill by using less to get the same services.
Right. Well,
The same air conditioning quality, the same refrigeration. Your freezer still freezes the things you want
But
frozen.
one thing we have to address, Bob, is the transmission costs.
Yes.
They are exorbitant.
They're the
Yes.
biggest. They're
They
the
are-
most
that's it.
rapidly rising costs.
Absolutely.
And they're going to continue to rise because we need more transmission to accommodate the renewables we want. Unless, and this isn't, oh my God, we're almost done. And I want to go on with Kat for a lot longer, but we'll have her back. Unless we get to microgrids and storage, so we don't have to depend on all this transmission, we can have the stability and the
And
reliability
that takes
provided
it
locally.
back to having leaders who have vision.
Right.
You have to have a plan. I'm a
Exactly.
program manager by trade.
Yeah.
It's like no plan just drives me insane. I can't- and so, on
Yeah.
something as important as energy, it's crazy to just be shooting in the dark.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, my goodness, Kat, this has gone by real fast. I know what,
was
and
fun.
I haven't even given you a chance to talk about the data platform, which is I consider one of the major achievements. But it's kind of wonky, And
Yeah, it is
I don't
wonky.
think in a minute left we can have you talk
Oh,
about
no.
what that's about. But I can tell folks it was really important. And Kat is one of our most effective legislators, and I'm just delighted that she's continuing to serve on this important committee. And I know she works well with people on both sides of the aisle in both houses, and that's very, very important. Not too many people have the skills of the information, the drive, and the ability to, see the big picture. And Kat McGee has got those skills in abundance, so it's really a privilege to have you here, Kat.
Thank you so much.
And obviously, I'm a fan. Lou, this has been fun. We're going to have the public health people on next week, Bill.
Great,
Lou.
great,
But
great.
you won't be here. But
Right,
Mike will be
but
with me.
Mike
We'll
will be
be
good.
back with the public health people to talk
Well,
about
they've done a
what's
great
happening
job.
with the
They've done a great
Delta
job.
variant, what that means for the city, and also about the thing we should not forget: the opioid crisis is
Yes.
still with us.
Which is with us.
So
right.
we'll be on next week. Okay, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our callers. Thank you to my guest, Kat,
Thank
for
you.
coming on.